السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. وصل اللهم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. آمين.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the last session for today is going to be led by me, by Zareen and Aisha Noor, but we want it to be more like an open discussion. So if someone has a question, please raise your hands, relevant questions. The topic we will discuss is hopelessness, and I think it's relevant to all of us, or to a lot of us, whether it's because of what we're witnessing now from like at the global scale, but also at the personal level. So we thought we would like to discuss about, what can cause hopelessness, how we can read it in, from the point or from the lens of Tawheed, divine unity. What are these feelings that are being created in us? How we can also seek the guidance in the Quran to help us also read these feelings, inshallah.
So we've been talking throughout today about different states of beings that are perhaps we find in ourselves, right? Sometimes the feelings that not liking injustice, states of fear, but also alongside these, there's sometimes a state of hopelessness. And we try to figure out how to navigate it, what to do with it. So I wanted to begin first. Let's see. Okay, so as Sara offered us a roadmap, right? I wanted to begin with this question of what is hopelessness and when do I experience it? And maybe we'll also talk about how do we respond to this hopelessness through the light of belief, through the light of the Quran, and how do we then let me go back. How do we express this belief practically? But to begin, there's this central question of what is hopelessness? So I wanted to kind of pose this question to all of us, right? When we speak of hopelessness, what occurs? Like, let's make this more dynamic so that all of us end up being more engaged. Yeah, please.
Despair.
Yeah.
It's just when you despair, like you can't understand that things will get better and there will be a light after the tunnel. And you get so hyper focused in whatever is worrying you or the difficulty you're stuck in.
Any other additions to that?
I just wanted to ask, especially what is happening in Palestine for the last 5 months, and now earlier, you were. I reacted as anybody else with a lot of pain and grief, and then every day I would look at Instagram and I would think that somebody in the world, some country would come watch. Like my whole life was obsessed and revolved around it. Now I've just switched myself off because I was a wreck and it's utter hopelessness. And sometimes you question that, you read Quran and you say Allah is the best planner. Then sometimes you ask, what is your plan?
Mm-hmm.
And why is the world not doing anything about it? Especially when you see the children. So that I think is total hopelessness. And the only thing I could save my sanity that I switched myself off. But what? How do we deal with it? And how do we deal with our faith? You say you cannot give up. That's not a good Muslim does. You have to believe in Allah. And everybody seems to be waiting for Imam Mahdi. When will he come? What will happen? What can we do? Sometimes I feel like, can I just go and can I do something, fight their battle, their war? I just don't know. It's complete hopelessness for me. That is hopelessness, like giving up and not doing anything. All I do is I do my salah and I just pray. Nothing else.
So, and these feelings are at the, I think, center of hopelessness, right? But let me also pose this to you guys, right? How would you define hopelessness? How would you approach it?
I think, yeah, similar to what has been said, it's a state, it's like a situation where I face this problem that's so great. There seems to be just no way out for me, and no one has a solution. No one has any power to help me. They can't even understand what I'm going through, because it seems to be something that's just so unique to me. So I'm in this situation that I'm looking for an answer, but I just can't seem to find it. And that leads to this feeling of hopelessness or despair, is what I would say.
So as said by everyone else and by just using, right, a state of feeling helpless without any point of support or refuge, right? And there's also then this question of when does hopelessness occur? Like under what conditions does it occur, right? And would you want to expound on that a bit?
Yeah, sure. I guess for me, the situations where I feel hopeless is where sort of maybe a situation where I just can't see the purpose to what I'm doing anymore. Like, for example, if I have like an existential crisis in my career, like, oh, did I choose like the right like field of study? Like, is this something that is going to like bring about something meaningful for me and for others? Because I also have this like feeling of wanting to like contribute in a positive way to other people as well. But also like kind of tying it back to sort of what we've been talking about, like we have certain expectations that we connect with events in our lives. Like we grow up kind of forming these associations between things. And then when something doesn't meet these expectations, you get this sense, like we were saying earlier, that an injustice has occurred. This might bring about a sense of fear and also hopelessness that, why isn't this working the way I would expect to? And like, maybe other situations could be like, I have this bad habit or something I'm trying to improve upon myself, and I just can't seem to. So all of these, I think.
So and those are all in some ways very different, but all united by the central feeling. So there's sometimes a loss of purpose. This can be sometimes in our career choices. Like I majored in this, but is this going to be what's going to lead me to contributing meaningfully to the world, right? It can be in our job. It can be in our relationship. Sometimes repeated failures, right? And those repeated failures can be like, I was just trying to invoke this one habit into my routine, but I can't even seem to stick to that, right? Maybe it's getting up early, maybe it's doing something else, studying more, exercising, whatever. So there's different scales of this hopelessness, right? And there's scales in which it's about myself and kind of just internal to my own situation in my life, right? There's situations in which it reaches out to others I care about, maybe those who I care about, someone, a relative is sick, right? Is terminally sick, but we're all terminally sick. But also like global events on scales that are unimaginable, right? That we feel completely are out of our reach, but we also care about it. We can't not care about it, in fact. So this hopelessness, I want to emphasize both on that global level that we're all very aware of, right? Because of Palestine, of Gaza, but also that this hopelessness is something that is part of our everyday life, whether there were large-scale events or not, right? It's something about how we understand ourselves, how we understand our lives, and how we navigate through our life, in fact, as well. And this leads to an essential question, I guess, of is hopelessness inevitable, right? Is it something that I just have to face as a human being? Is it something that no matter what I do is just a reality that I faced? Any thoughts on that before I chip in my own?
I mean, I think to say inevitable, because as you said, like there are different levels of hopelessness. I might like face hopelessness in, you know, in a on a daily basis. Like from a now when I think about it, like the smaller things become like it would be like, why did I even feel hopeless? You know, there are like bigger things going on, but still it means like if there wasn't this bigger things going on, I wouldn't have, you know, I would have still felt this hopelessness of the other things that are failing in my life. So I think it is inevitable, and that's why it's important to talk about it and not talk about it and I mean like, you know, you can go to a psychiatrist and talk about it. Talk about it, it means like how should I read it? From the lens of Tawheed, you know, how should I read it? Like, why is this feeling being created in me? Why it is like, if I would think about it from like, you know, Iman, what Brother Burkhan was saying, because it's making me insecure, you know, like when I face this hopelessness and I can like reach this level of despair, and what the sister here said, that she doesn't see the light and at the end of the tunnel, it means that I'm kind of like, you know, whatever I've been taught, that there is justice, there's going to be an ultimate justice, there's mercy in the creation, but I don't see that, you know, like it becomes like nothing is making sense, nothing has a purpose. Basically also what I do on a daily basis doesn't have a purpose anymore, so it's kind of affecting my faith, my security in what I believe that should be my creator, my sustainer, how should the world look around me. That's why I think like it is also like why we should talk about it, in a sense, like when the sister there said that, for example, no one is doing anything and no country interfered. It means also this is something that I was seeking the help and refuge from someone else, other than like this hopelessness led me to lose patience and seek this hopelessness from someone else, from another country, from another person, from another culture that I thought is going to be able to help me. So it's something that we should talk about, so we can come back and look why we're feeling what we're feeling, how we should, you know, read what we're feeling, and where should it take us? Like, how should it bring us back to being secure in our faith?
Yeah. And I also want to say though that I think, you know, it's beyond, we don't choose what we necessarily feel, right? And we don't choose the fact that we're needy. Like this is just a reality that I face. Like, yes, I have needs. Yes, I am helpless, right? Those are not necessarily facts of my life that I can change. But hopelessness becomes a sort of a decision I make, in fact, because it's a decision I make that in the face of my needs, in the face of my helplessness, there is no point of refuge. There's no point of support. And sometimes this decision comes about because I realize all the points of support that I thought would be the resolution to the problems that I face are falling down or are being inactive, right? Are not meeting my expectations. But hopelessness becomes a sort of interpretation I make of the events that I face, that there is no point of refuge, there is no point of rescue, there is no point of support. And this will be something that we keep revisiting throughout inshallah today's discussion and presentation. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think we've established that hopelessness is a very relevant problem, both like in our personal lives and on a global scale, with what's happening in Gaza and in other places. But sort of on a practical level, like how do I deal with this feeling? Like, how do I solve it? Is it solvable? Like, what should I do about this feeling?
And you know, Zuri, before like we go even into that question, I just want to emphasize this, that when we come up here, right, and we're talking about hopelessness, and this is a topic like we've as a smaller group kind of studied through Quranic verses, through tafsir, and we're just here to share our own understandings, the extent to which we've understood. But I want us as in all of us, right, to approach this not as something like this theoretical problem that we should resolve, or even like what is the psychology of hopelessness, right? Like we shouldn't intellectualize it or make it academic, but rather, and I think it's not too easy, not too difficult, this portion of it, like I should approach this is a real problem I have in my life. And first, maybe I should ask the question of like, is this a real problem I have in my life? And if so, how do I then present it to my creator, present it to the Quran such that I can seek guidance from it? So not making it an issue that is distant from me. And again, events both globally and within my life should remind me that this is not an issue that is distant from me. This is in fact something that I face on a day-to-day basis. But going back to the question that you had asked of, how do we then, respond to it? How do we treat it? How do we reflect on it? I guess these are the essential questions that we want to think about all together and share with everyone as well. So along that note, Sarah, do you want to read this?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Say, O my servants who have transgressed against themselves, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. Indeed, Allah forgives all sins. Indeed, it is He who is the forgiving, the merciful.
So here we have a verse from the Quran, right? But I want us to also ask the question of like, okay, like why do I have a verse of the Quran? Is it because, oh, I'm Muslim and therefore I go to the Quran, right? Yes. Or else we wouldn't be gathered here maybe today. But also, like, as a human being, this speech is telling me it is the speech of my creator and that it is guidance from my creator to me. And if hopelessness is something that I'm facing in my here and now, right now, in my life, within every aspect of my life, in fact, then the Quran, if it is to be a guidance for me, if it is to be a relevant speech to me, it should also address this for me as well, right? That is an expectation I should have from the speech of my creator. And so I go to it, right? And I wanted to share this verse here because I think there's a number of points here that I want to draw our attention to. First and foremost, right? And I'll go back to the first part of it, but it says, do not despair of the mercy of the rahmah of Allah, right? Of God. So that immediately kind of tells us, gives us a starting point, if you will. And then it also says that God forgives all sins and that He is the most forgiving, the most merciful, right? So immediately here, when we are any mention of despair, right? And here we'll use kind of despair and hopelessness interchangeably, right? The first mention of despair is immediately followed by mention of mercy, right? Saying yes, it's saying do not despair. It's not saying what's despair, like what are you talking about? No, it's saying yeah, that feeling you have, that hopelessness, that despair, I know what it is. I mean, I'm the creator of it, in fact. When certain situations occur, this is how you will feel. But when you feel it, don't forget the mercy of God, is the first reminder. And here, though, it's also giving me a hint of when this despair or hopelessness occurs, right? It's saying when you have transgressed against, my servants have transgressed against themselves, so have committed, as it says, israf, a sort of waste against themselves, despair will occur. So it's outlining the conditions under which despair or hopelessness starts to take place in my life, right? And yeah,
I just want to ask something. So I feel like this ayah does talk about like despair, about hopelessness, but it's talking about like hopelessness caused by me like committing israf
Right.
or sinning against myself. But like I feel, and we do sin against ourselves. I'm not saying that this is not the situation we live in, but I feel like the more like the hopelessness that we're living now, or the people are concerned about more, is the the injustice that's taking place, from like humans against other humans. Like this is what's causing now our despair, right?
Yeah.
So
you're
how
saying-
does this connect to my feeling of
Yeah.
of despair?
So you're saying, Sarah, okay, sometimes sometimes I can be hopeless because of my own sins, right? My own shortcomings, but also I'm hopeless because of what other people are doing. precisely because of what other people are doing. But the verse here is reminding me that even the despair that occurs when other people are doing things, right, to hurt the ones that you love, to kill the ones that you care about, that feeling of despair emerges because of this transgression against yourself. And I should then ask the question of, what does it mean to transgress against myself? What does it mean to commit israf against myself? And how I understand this, right, is that I commit waste, or I waste my human given qualities, my human given feelings, when I do not read them in the name of my creator. Right? So I've been given the need, I've been given the feeling of mercy, of compassion, right? I see a kitten, we mentioned the kitten in the first session, right? I care about it. I feel compassion towards it, in fact. When I do not utilize this emotion, this feeling of compassion, when I do not see it as being given by him to me, that becomes a waste of that quality. When I attribute it to myself, when I think this feeling of compassion belongs to me, this ability to recognize injustice and say, this is unjust, I don't like it, that also belongs to me. To say, I dislike X, Y, and Z, and to think that the ability to dislike that in the first place belongs to me, that becomes a waste of that quality, right? Like we usually say, oh, like israf is, like here's the banana, right? Like don't waste it, eat it. And then that's true, like we should not waste bananas, right? But also the various faculties that are given to us, right? Like our intelligence, our ability to reason, our ability to love others, our ability to value life, right? Our need for justice, like all these, holistically, like all these faculties, abilities, qualities that we're given as human beings, the Quran is also telling us, don't waste them. Don't forget that they have been given to you. And my job as a human being is to return them to their creator. And by returning, right, we say inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un when someone passes away, right? But also it's a process of returning. Every day of my life, I recognize my breath, my body, right? It's being given existence, it's being given life. And all my qualities, my faculties, like if, I have grandmothers who if you live closely with elderly people, as they start to age and age and age, and I'm talking like late 80s and 90s, they're losing certain faculties. I have a grandma who she has Alzheimer's, and she doesn't know like who's talking to her, what day it is. And I'm sure she was a remarkably smart, intelligent lady, right? In her youth, perhaps. But that disease, perhaps, I call it Alzheimer's, but it also becomes a kind of educator to me, a messenger rather, to show me, hey, this quality of intelligence, of memory, it doesn't belong to you. It's being taken away. If it belonged to her, she'd hold on to it, right? If our youthfulness belonged to us, we'd hold on to it. There's, I won't give names, but, sometimes professors, if they don't retire and they're still in the academy after a certain point, they're like, I'm sure you were great at one point in your career, but certain qualities of yours are what we call it deteriorating. We call it deterioration. What is it? It's the creator showing, hey, it didn't belong to him or her, right? If it did, it would stick with them. And they try to hold on to it until they're pushed out to retirement, right? Saying, oh, we'll make you professor emeritus. But which, like open up for the younger folks. We need jobs too. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that like intelligence is one sort of very obvious quality because we recognize the lack of it or the loss of it. And just hold that thought, right? The loss of it. And we recognize the loss or deterioration of other qualities, of youthfulness, of strength, right? But all of these losses or deteriorations are means of showing us the qualities don't belong to us. And when we are given them, when they are at their prime, right? Even like those who may not be able to like, there might be certain, I'm not an expert in this, there might be certain psychological diseases when people lose their ability to empathize, right? Like that shows you that ability to empathize, that ability to feel compassion also doesn't belong to you. It can be given, it can be taken away. So to cut it short here, what I'm trying to say is we transgress against ourselves when we look at the qualities, the faculties that are part of being human, and we say, this is mine. It doesn't belong, it belongs to me. So I look at injustices that are happening. I have this feeling of compassion, of mercy, and I'm saying, no, like my heart can't stand this. And that leads me to despair because I say, this is my quality. But the Quran is telling me I should take that quality and say, oh, my creator has given this to me. And when I recognize that it's given to me, that leads me to then, as we'll talk about, another ed point, not despair, but rather a recognition of mercy, right? I'm able to recognize mercy. But I've talked on for a little bit.
So if I
go back to that question in a moment.
Oh, you had a question? Sorry. So if I understand it correctly, you're saying that the first step that we should take is to ask ourselves, why is this feeling being created in me before asking, or how
Where
is
is
it?
it from? Is it mine? Yeah. I get excited. I mean, the Quran is I get excited precisely because like this is it's a description of my reality. You know, it says, hey, don't transgress against yourself. I say, well, have I transgressed? I don't know. Like, have I? And then it opens up, right? And then I say, oh, I am actually. I am wasting my qualities. Maybe I'm utilizing them. I'm going to school. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But am I reading it in his name? Am I seeing it as something that is given to me? The givenness of it, the createdness of it. Zareen, I think you wanted to say something.
Oh, first, maybe do we want to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Let's take your question. Yeah.
So last Saturday when I was here, we were talking about one of the things, the diseases of the heart. And I was just thinking, is that's also transgressing against yourself, right? When you like are greedy or arrogant or any of those things. But how do you decide that those qualities don't belong to Allah, you know, like how do you differentiate? Like right now you're saying intelligence doesn't belong to me, my empathy doesn't belong to me, this doesn't belong to me. But then how do you differentiate that greed doesn't belong to me and who does it belong to? Arrogance doesn't belong to me. Who does that belong to? Like the negative emotions and feelings that we have, how do we deal with them? And who do we relate those to?
Yeah. So this, I will give a short answer, right? A brief answer so that we can continue on to the actual topic. But there are certain faculties that I have, right? That I find myself, like the ability to reason, to make choices, right? But the outcome of those choices lead to certain states. It may lead to certain states of arrogance. Like arrogance arises when I say something is mine. I'm intelligent. I'm wise. So there's an interpretive move there. I make a choice. And the end choice of it is this feeling of arrogance that also brings me to despair, right? That also brings me to a state of, oh, I have to maintain this intelligence now. I have to maintain this wisdom now, right? So the faculties that I have, right? These are different from states of being that we might associate as negative states of greed, arrogance. These are outcomes of us misusing or misutilizing the qualities that we have, right? So I've been given the quality to be generous, right? It's as Brother Yusuf was saying, there's a multiple choice, right? Here's the money. What do? Be generous, be greedy, right? These are the choices that I make. But the faculty there is of choice. And when I am greedy, there's signposts there that I've made the wrong choice. And I might try to ignore them. There's discomfort there. There's a self-anger there. There's discontentment there. So the misuse of our choices lead us to those states, right? That we call diseases of the heart as well. And those diseases of the heart also come with their discomforts that act as reminders that, hey, you're going off track, if you will. But we can talk more about that, inshallah. Yeah.
I just want to add one thing that came up to like, I think about it now, that, so you said, for example, you transgress against yourself. One of the forms of transgression against oneself is that when you think what you have is from you, you know, like it's not something that has been or being given to you. I think another form of transgression, I think about it, is that when you think, you know, the world that we live in, like the world order, what they call, or maybe the form of justice or the security, you know, is also being provided by, you know, someone else other than, you know, from someone else, from a different from some army somewhere in the world, or from some, some politician sitting somewhere in the world, or like, so we're still, so maybe I'm not seeking this for myself now, but I'm still not seeking it from the right source.
Yeah.
So that's also a form of, I feel like it's a form of transgression.
That's a form
Like
of,
taking refuge in someone else and believing that this security, this justice, whatever that's happening is actually coming from, from like some other humans out there.
yeah. I mean, that's beautifully said, Sarah. And that is in fact another form of israf, I'd say, right? It's a waste of, I experience maybe justice, a manifestation of it in the world. And I say, oh, see, this country, they are the enactors of this justice. I experience mercy in my mother, right? And the moment I say it belongs to her, she's the creator of that mercy and compassion, I am committing israf, or waste, against the existence of that manifestation of mercy. So that's a beautiful point. And also I'll plug part of my dissertation is about. So inshallah, let's continue. But here, this verse again, what I want to highlight here is israf against myself is a wastage of my human qualities in terms of not reading them in the name of my creator, or not reading them as being given, as being created, right? But also being told that when you do this, when you waste your qualities in this way, you're going to fall into a state of hopelessness. You're going to fall into a state of despair because you attribute them to yourself, right? But that this again immediately is followed of, if you're able to see the createdness of it, if you're able to read it in the name of one's sustainer, then there will be the rahmah of it, inshallah. And also that whenever I make that wrong multiple choice, like again, I'm the door for that repentance is always open. And also like this goes into realizing that the purpose of creation then, right, is one of recognizing mercy. And wherever I don't recognize mercy, that's when that despair and hopelessness arises. We have a question as well.
I wanted to make a brief comment since I kind of
He's allowed to make a comment
I was
since he
part
was
of
part
these
of the
discussions, but
second group.
I just wanted to make a comment, the transgression part, the israf. Like it's very interesting here. It says the word is israf, or waste, that we can do against ourselves. And I think the first two sessions we were talking about injustice, we were talking about fear. Last session, fear, we came to the conclusion fear is a teacher, if I use it correctly. Like maybe initially I approached fear, this feeling of fear I have, as something I need to be scared of, I need to run away from. Like I've wasted that feeling. Like it's a waste upon myself. And when I waste it, now I fall into some type of despair, or I'm afraid, I can't sleep at night. But if I don't waste that feeling given to me, then it becomes my teacher. Or with injustice, it becomes a means for me to now seek for my creator, be patient, learn. Like these feelings that are given to me, if I waste them, then I fall into despair. Like every feeling I have, whether it's fear, injustice, or other feelings, can, like, what does it point to? What does it mean? Let's not waste that. I think like it's beautiful that it uses that word.
And this reminds me of Imam Suhaib, may God have mercy on his soul. For those, I mean, Princeton folks will know him. He was a chaplain at Princeton, right? And passed away in 2021, returned to his creator. But one thing that he said during that period of time when he had terminal cancer was, cancer is my teacher, right? And this really stuck with me, right? He did not see cancer as an avenue to hopelessness or despair, but rather he saw the mercy in it. He read it in the name of his creator and saw it therefore as a messenger, as a teacher, educating him about his own reality. And you know, that's inshallah we can also embody that very prophetic character and attitude. Yes.
Yeah. I guess I kind of wanted, so this discussion has been kind of reminding me of an incident that I faced kind of earlier this week that, you know, I felt really hopeless because of such and such mistake I made. And in that moment, you know, it's easy to be like, oh no, like there's nothing I can do. I made this plan and now it's suddenly falling apart. So I guess in that moment, you know, I tried to be like, no, this is happening for a reason. There's a lesson here. But, you know, it still kind of feels like a shot in the dark, kind of like, you know, you don't feel, or at least I didn't feel like the presence of anyone there to help me. It was kind of like, oh God, like, please help me. Like, if you hear this, like, I need like a way out type of a thing. So I guess, for me, one question is like, how can I confirm like this mercy? Like, I've been given, like, in a moment like that, like, I don't immediately think to, oh, I've been given such, like justice in the way my hands were created, or mercy in the way I like see or eat
You don't
or
wake up thinking,
breathe.
oh, this is.
I know, I wish I did, but alhamdulillah, like, I feel like there's such like a reactionary kind of, like, for me, I tend to react like, how do I fix this? Like, what do I do next? Type of a deal. So like, how in that situation, sort of when my initial response is sort of like, how do I fix this myself? Like, how do I take a step back and sort of recognize like the mercy and the guidance and like the teaching in this situation?
So I guess this is at the center of our discussion, right? Like, how do I confirm the mercy of my sustainer, of the one who calls himself my Rabb, my educator, my nourisher? And we're going to get to that in just a moment, but I wanted to also just okay, this is a little, but I wanted to just also touch upon these two verses right here. They're in the context of, again, Ibrahim alayhi salam, when the angels come to him, right, telling him that he will have a son despite his old age. And it says, they responded, we give you good news in all truth, so do not be one of those who despair. And here, I feel that this is saying that there is good news or mercy in creation, right? So do not fail to read it, because if you fail to read it, then you will fall into despair, right? And it continues, and he said, and who despairs of the mercy of his Lord, except for those astray, right? And this isn't meant to say like, okay, if you're feeling hopeless, you've gone astray, right? But it's also kind of I always use this example, like if you're driving and you go outside the lane, right? Even if you don't have a fancy car, someone once called me out on saying only fancy cars do this. No, but like if it's a nice highway, right? If it's a turnpike or something like that, if you go out of the lane, what happens? What's that? Some beep beep maybe in the car, but also because of the way that they've paved the road, right? It sends vibrations to the car, right? What's it called? The grooves of the pavement, right? The grooves warn you, they're a little uncomfortable, but they warn you, hey, you're going off the lane. In a similar way, right? I'm told that I'm going astray. Hey, you're going off the lane if you're feeling this hopelessness, because you're forgetting that all of existence, all of creation is a manifestation of his mercy. It is in fact good news if I'm able to read it in his name, if I'm able to see it as a manifestation of his wisdom, of his as part of his creation. But this doesn't resolve, as you said during our question of how do we respond to this hopelessness, right? And I guess central to this is this critical question of, do I have a sustainer? Do I have a Rabb? Like, okay, yes, again, we're Muslim, right? But oftentimes we take for granted, yes, I was, Allah takes care of us and everything. Like, do I feel this in my life? Whatever situation I'm going through that's bringing me to this hopelessness, right? Do I feel beyond that and before that state of hopelessness? Have I felt that I'm being sustained in an active way in every facet of my life, right? And so it's these central questions of who is my creator, and more importantly, who is, as the Quran acquaints me, my Rabb, my sustainer, the one who creates me. And also, like, what does it mean to have a Rabb, right? And I think there was one more here, and we'll wait for that one. But I guess here, it's a question of, the more I observe the ways in which I am receiving sustenance in my life, whether I see it as coming from God or not, right? First, I have to ask the question, like, do I receive sustenance in my life? And by sustenance, I mean this very broadly, like even in terms of our bodies, right? Like as physical beings, like we were hungry this morning, and then there was breakfast. And then I brought the breakfast, I brought it close to my mouth, and then I put it inside my mouth, and then things happened. I have no clue how. It was digested, and this feeling of fullness came, right? Like I was sustained in that moment, or it was a manifestation of sustenance that's very sort of tangible and relatable, because we go through it every single day at some point. Now, in other facets of my life, like all throughout my life, when I want to breathe, I breathe. When I want to raise my hand, I raise my hand, right? When I want to feel, when I have my emotions want to be sustained, right? Like a cat comes up to me and like rubs its head against my leg or something like that. I'm like, oh, it's cute. Like I enjoy that. I see a plant, I say, this is a pretty plant. That plant, my interaction with the plant is giving me enjoyment. There is sustenance there, right? And these are very these are very minute examples, right? So the more I recognize how in every single moment of my life I am undergoing through a constant sustenance, then it leads me to ask the question of, well, who is the one giving this sustenance? Does the cat know? Does it own the ability to make me feel loved so thoroughly? If it did, it wouldn't like depart the next moment when I'm like, no, stay, continue loving me. No, it goes away, right? So I think it comes down to, how do I make sense of, how do I read the various ways in which I do receive sustenance in my life? Do I see it as coming from my mother? Do I see it as coming from, the springtime? And now the depression of winter has lifted and the sun, now I'm getting the vitamin D and I'm happy, right? So how do I recognize and how do I make sense and interpret the many sustenances of my life that I already am going through, right? And the more I recognize them, the more I can say, yes, I am being taken care of. I have a Rabb, I have a sustainer. Because look at all these past experiences. Look at this very moment, in fact. Does that, yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, you want
And
to
you can
go
be
first.
like, oh, Aishanur, that, who are we kidding?
No, I'm not gonna say that. It just, so I think what we're trying to focus on here is to try to recognize at every moment that we are being sustained. So this is like the first step we take. But I think sometimes you can like interpret like what you're getting in a different way. So for example, someone would say, when you said like you ate the food and you were full, well, it's the food. You saw the plant and it made you feel good. It's the plant. So again, like this, even realizing that we're being sustained in every moment, not realizing where the sustenance is coming from can also lead us to this, despair and hopelessness. Again, like we go back to like there's order in the world that should be maintained. There should be justice. So it's coming from some culture, some humans, some laws, some ideals that humans developed at some point in civilization. So this should be applied. This is also, we are still not recognizing, we're recognizing that, there's something that should sustain us or take care of us, but we're not going back to the, to the right source of the things. So I feel like in addition to realizing that we're being sustained, the second step, or I would think, is how to realize that we're being sustained by a merciful creator who sustains everything and everyone, or who is sustaining me. It's definitely not the food, because if I would have eaten this food while my stomach is not so well, I wouldn't feel full, so it means it's not the food itself. It's something else giving me this feeling of fulfillment. Yes. Again, we go back to the cure, what Brother Burkal says, the cure is to recognize that it's not from this, not from this, and not from that. It's something else that is giving me this sustenance.
That is also not dependent, that is also not in need of sustenance itself.
Because if we don't go to this sustainer, to this one creator, we'll again fall in despair when we don't get what we're expecting from these things, when they will fail us at some point. So we have to take refuge in something that will not fail us, will not lead us to fall in despair, will not leave us at any moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, Rest in peace to the Zoom. It also goes back to like your question of how do I experience the mercy of my sustainer, right? And I guess like again, this is a familiar example maybe to some of us, but I find it very useful for myself, so I will invoke it here now too. And it begins by asking the question, well, Zareen, do you experience the compassion of your mother?
Yes.
you
I have
sure
to
of it?
say that because
Is-
she's on
Your
here.
mother, is she on?
I think so.
So is she a compassion? Well, now it's really.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But okay, let's pretend like you don't know you're not under pressure, of course, but because in fact she's a merciful mother. Why would she do that? So the question is your mother merciful?
Yes.
Are you sure of that?
Yes.
How do you know?
Well, at every point in my life, she has cared for me, showed me compassion. Yeah, just was
What
there
if
for me.
I told you she's tricked you, and when you turn 30, she's gonna put a bullet. She's been taking care of you, she's been nourishing you, but the moment you turn 30, boom. This is the I'm continuing the trend of violent examples, I guess. So what would you say if I said, yeah, it's like this?
I guess my initial reaction would be like, why would I believe that if all I've experienced is love and compassion? Like, I have no, like, that just seems like a out of the blue kind of.
You would not be this polite. Okay. You'd say, "How dare you
What are
say my
you
mother
talking
is
about?
difficult?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, you'd be you'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, what's wrong with you? You'd be like, what are you, a psychopath? Like you wouldn't even entertain it. You wouldn't even answer me, respond to me with such a logical and coherent response of like, well, so far all of my observations have shown that you in fact a merciful and compassionate mother.
So the conclusion should be.
Like you wouldn't even bother answering me. I think what a stupid, silly question. Get your brain checked out. And why is this the case though? You tell me, why is this the case? And we're like that laughter I'm taking not as a sort of like, oh, I'm hilarious, but as a sort of laughter of agreement, right?
Right.
Of like, oh yeah, like that, like this is also the case for my mother or my experience with someone who loves me.
Yeah, I guess like I don't know, there's just no way like I feel like it's almost like an instinctual thing that like this is what I've experienced and
This
Yeah,
is so
it's-
rather than instinctual, this is what you've experienced.
yeah.
Right? In terms of when you look out into your experiences, what you witnessed, what you make shahada to, right? Your witnessing has shown you that this is the truth. And your conviction in the merciful nature of your mother is based upon that experience and observation of her constant nurturing, her constant sustenance, her constant worrying over you, right? Never giving a single hint, a sign of any kind that she's devoid of any compassion, right? And in a similar way, then, that conviction, like I can build the conviction that I have a merciful sustainer, the more I look to my experiences in my life, the more I observe the ways in which I am being nurtured and sustained with a conscious eye, with a very what's the word? Alertness, perhaps, right?
Yeah, I guess that kind of brings to mind like sort of what I experience when I am separated from my mother. For example, like in college, first I would be so excited to like, kind of be independent and whatnot. Then I'd realize, wow, I really am sick of this dining hall food and I miss like my mother's cooking. So it's like I don't realize what I had until like it leaves me. So maybe in a similar way, like with like kind of getting to know my creator, I think we like touched upon this earlier, like when you kind of see these things that you take for granted, but are separated from you, that's when you kind of like start to see, oh, like this is like the mercy I was given. Like I become sick, that is a signpost to show, I was being given health like all this time.
And that becomes the taken awayness, let's say, for lack of better phrasing, of health, also becomes a mercy in its own way of reminding you of your reality, right? So even the lack of one kind of mercy becomes a mercy of a different kind, perhaps we can say.
Before we continue, I'd like to apologize to my mom for not defending you better.
we love you, Manibaji. Right.
I have a question. So you're saying that because I experienced mercy, I am then expecting it, right? So because I know how my mom is, I lived with her, she gave me what I needed when I needed it, or because like when I were at some point sick, I realized, okay, had been given health. But then it comes to me like, so I'm experiencing mercy. I'm also living, alhamdulillah, like a nice privileged life. So everything is being given to me. So why isn't it being given to others? Like, is it also like you're saying that what I'm experiencing and what others are experiencing is also mercy? Like everything is being given to me, everything is being given to them. But why does it seem like what's being given to me is like it's given by someone else? Like my Rabb is merciful. My Rabb is taking care of me, is bringing me like this delight and happiness in my life, but somehow he's bringing like a suffering to someone else's life. How could these two things be coming from the same sustainer, from the same merciful Rabb that we're talking about?
Yeah. So it becomes a question of how can I be convinced that my sustainer is also the sustainer of all of creation, right? That my Rabb, that I say Hada Rabbi or Rabbi, right, is also Rabbil Alameen. Because my heart wants not just mercy in my life, but I want others, whether I know them or I don't know them, right? I want others that I care about to also live a merciful existence. I want them to be taken care of as well. And sometimes that comes to the heart of despair or hopelessness, right? I feel like they're not experiencing that mercifulness. This is a manifestation of mercy right there. MashaAllah. So this comes to first and foremost, right? My responsibility before I start to question, well, how come other people are not living a merciful life? Have I recognized the mercy in my life? Do I recognize the constancy of it, in fact? The continuous nature of it? Do I see it in even moments where I dislike it? Like I can dislike sickness and illness, right? And that's okay. Like I've been made to, I shouldn't be like, I want to be sick forever. This is mercy. No, like I can try to seek a remedy to that. But I can also, I have to ask myself, have I read it in such a fashion where I see that this sickness is reminding me of my reality of neediness, of absolute impotence, and connecting me back to my creator, and thus being a form of rahmah, of being a form of mercy. So first becomes the question of, do I locate, do I recognize the continuous manifestations of mercy in my life, right? That becomes my first and foremost responsibility. Now, secondly, the mercy that we experience sometimes through our mothers, through others, right? Like our mothers, or the one that, it might be a mother, it might be a father, it might be someone else that we feel compassion from, like they will die. And maybe they have died, right? So the question becomes, does the compassion that I experience from them, the mercy that I experience from them, does it end with them? If it belonged to them, then it ends. When they die, then I'm saying all the compassion, love in my life has also ended, right? But if I see that it was a manifestation of mercy, and that it comes not from a finite source, but an infinite source, a source that is not sort of limited in how much mercy it can give. It's not like, well, I gave Sada 70% of my mercy today, 30% will be left to you, Aishan, or sorry, tough luck. No. I recognize even when I examine the rest of creation, right? Like kittens suckling their mother, the blooming of flowers, right? Just very clear, like obvious manifestations of mercy in existence. I recognize that the ways in which that mercy is being manifested points to an absolute source. It's not limited. If it was limited, it would be like, these flowers can bloom, this one can't. No. The entirety of the world is constantly undergoing constant transformation, right? Constant beings are being sustained. I'm being sustained right now, my breath. the breath and lives of everyone else in this room is being sustained. All of this is constantly pointing to the fact that the mercy and compassion that I'm experiencing, that I say is from my Rabb, is from an absolute source. Now, when I recognize this, even if I don't necessarily see how others may experience mercy in their life, I can say the one who takes care of me must also be the one that takes care of them, because his mercy is not limited. His mercy is not restricted. It doesn't run out. And I recognize that also he has the ability to deliver that mercy to them, right? He's not limited in his sort of ability or power as well, right? So all of this leads me to say the one who takes care of me, the one who manifests his mercy in my life, must also be the one that is continuously not depriving others of mercy either, right? Manifestations of that mercy might differ, and the ways in which we read it might differ as well, right? Like we were talking about this earlier today. I don't know if you want to mention it.
Yeah, like you might think that something is merciful or is good for you, but it might not be. So for example, I might think that, you know, the life I'm living right now, the way I'm living it right now is something good, is something merciful, but it might be something that is, you know, maybe driving me away from my like faith or my purpose in life, or my purpose as a, you know, as a human being. It's the same thing is that, you know, what's happening, you know, what's happening like at the global scale or in Gaza or so, it can be. So for example, if I read it like it's mercy and it's like something that, you know, made me realize that, you know, these people are not the source of justice. These people are not the source of mercy, you know, whoever committing this or supporting this, whatever. If it brought me back to the real giver and sustainer of mercy and justice, then it's actually like these feelings are actually mercy on me. The event by itself is mercy on me.
Yeah.
Can we say that?
Yeah, and I would say, like, you know, like, you know, especially with social media and everything, we saw that like many people in Palestine, right? Like our faith is being shaken and their faith is being strengthened, revived, right? So how do you get two different reactions to it? And it shows that it's about interpretation, right? They see the mercy clearly, but
The one
choose
who's
to
not living the
who's not even
suffering.
living through it, say, no, how can there be mercy here? Right? I make a false interpretation on that behalf. But also, first and foremost, again, like I have to base my conviction about my creator's mercifulness through my experiences and observations. When I can conclude that it must be from an absolute source, an all-powerful source, one whose will and volition goes to the entirety of the cosmos, then I can say he must be also manifesting and continuously giving his mercy to everyone that requires it, right? To all of creation, in fact. Hence, I can call him Rabb al-Alameen, right? All of existence.
Well, then comes another question. So one of the things that we have as mercy, you know, we say that is, you know, we are, alhamdulillah, like believers. We have our like Quran as guidance. We have also the belief that, you know, there is like this eternal life. So this life is not eternal. This is not the real thing, that there is this eternal life, you know, and death is not the end for us. But then, so, you know, like, and then you see, for example, also like see the people or kids dying. And as a Muslim, you also believe that this is not the end for us, for them. They are actually going to a better place, you know, they are going to heaven. But like, you still feel sad and angry about it, you know? So as a Muslim, you believe that this life is not the end. And actually this life is a source of suffering, right? And dying might be a better thing. They are going to a better place. We have also the concept of martyrdom in Islam. Like, you know, you have the ayah that وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. Don't ever think that those who die in the cause of Allah are dead, but they are actually alive, being, you know, provided. So we have this thing, we have this concept, and we believe this, but we still feel the sad and anger about what's going on. So I feel like I don't know how to reconcile between the both of them. Or is it okay to still feel angry and sad knowing that these people are going to, you know, that there is a better place waiting for us, that this life is not the eternal life, knowing that also as believers, what there was like other ayah before, like we are meant to go through this, this exam, this suffering, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just find it hard to, like, I want justice to be fulfilled now, but I also like believe that there is this eternal justice waiting for us.
Yeah. So I think these are really important questions. And to the extent of my understanding, right, we're trying to understand together here. I think first and foremost, we have to revisit our conception of death, right? Because and also, how come we believe in an afterlife? How come? Again, this goes back to okay, we're Muslim, we believe, and the Quran says so, right? But also, this is also a feeling I would like continued existence. Thank you very much. I don't want, so how we conceive of death, even if we're Muslim, because of the ways, the various ideologies, right? Societal descriptions, is that usually it's one of annihilation and eternal separation. And our hearts can't bear this idea. It can't bear it, in fact, of complete destruction. And I find within myself, right, the need for an eternal existence, for a continued existence, one of complete security, one of complete contentment and happiness. Now, when it comes to, as you said, those who die, right? Let's say, half of Gaza is children, maybe more, right? I've been created in such a way where I dislike that, right? And I should take my steps, my practical steps to, as has been touched in the previous discussions, to ensure that, to the extent that I can, justice is delivered, right? But to the extent that it also looks to me like if I had received news that those children or anyone who dies were transferred to a peaceful country, were given refuge, were given the best of education and the best of life's offerings, right? I wouldn't feel as sad. I wouldn't feel as distraught because I'd say, okay, they're in a better place now. And I'd be convinced of that. But when we say, oh, yes, there's heaven and they're going to heaven, I'm not fully convinced of that, such that I can't sort of extract myself out of that distraughtness, right? So I have to revisit the idea of, is death annihilation? Is death eternal separation? Because my heart doesn't want to accept that. And the reason and the message that I can receive by reading, I find in myself that idea unbearable. That idea of being unbearable is also a means of receiving the divine promise that I will be given continued existence. And not just me, but also the ones that I love, that I care about, right? And when I come to the Quran gives me that good news of eternal happiness, right? Then I say, yes, I can confirm this because I've been created in such a way where I want this, in fact. So it's about recognizing reading our emotions, right? Reading our emotions in the name of our Creator, reading our emotions in the name of the one who gives them. And if I've been given this dislike of death, it's because I dislike eternal separation. My Creator is saying death is not eternal separation. Death is not annihilation, nor is it destruction. And obviously there are different practical steps here of this doesn't mean I should not try to prevent death. I should not try to take my steps, but that when it does happen, I can feel that sadness, but I can also recognize and be convinced that they are in the refuge of my Creator now, right? Then, here and then as well. And I guess in this way, emotions educate us. They tell us, yes, you've been created in such a way where you do not like annihilation. Not for myself, nor for others, in fact. And so my emotions telling me this is also my Creator's way of telling me this, both through my existence and both through the Quranic speech, right? Through the Prophet ﷺ, that you have not been created for annihilation, right? We gave the example of would it make sense if my mother raised me to the stage at 30, the bullet comes. Now there's kids, I don't want to make those examples, but in the same way, I recognize that my Creator is an all-merciful one, and his mercy reaches not only me, but every being, right? Then that absolute source must also not annihilate them, right? Leave them to eternal separation as well. And the one who's giving me this sadness, this anger, right, is also introducing me to himself as the all-merciful one, the all-compassionate one. He's the one that's giving existence to the children, to the ability to care about them, the ability to feel compassion, right? So all of these emotions, these states of beings are so valuable to us in acquainting us with who our creator is, such that when we come to the Quran with those states of beings, I can say, yes, this must be the speech of my creator because my expectations and what the Quran is offering me match out, right? I can say, this is exactly what I am in need of, the kind of good news that I need to receive. Inshallah. And
So I just want to like try to make it clear to the audience. So one of the points you're trying to make is that, so as a human witnessing this injustice, I dislike it. So this feeling of disliking this kind of justice is being created in me. And it does not contradict with the fact that I seek eternal justice. Like I dislike the death and the suffering that the people are living, and at the same time, I'm seeking the afterlife, the eternal justice. That I want to believe in that. And then it comes, so how I can confirm and witness that there's this eternal justice that is coming from, eternal sustainer, is by the fact that I need this, and I had other needs before that were sustained, and they are being sustained. So this belief that this need also that has been created in me or being created in me will also be sustained.
And also like my feelings, the world around me, right? Like the previous discussions touched upon there being order, measure in creation. So I see manifestations of that justice in various ways in the world. And I see them pointing to the same source constantly. And so when I look at my feelings as well, that say, yes, I want eternal justice, with my experience of the world, with my witnessing of my own human feelings, with what the Quranic speech offers and matches up to all of these experiences, right? Then I can say there must be a one who gives eternal justice, right? Because I experience his manifestations of justice now, and he's giving me that promise within myself and that promise through the Quranic speech. It becomes, it doesn't become just wishful thinking, but something that I am convinced about, right? That I say this must necessarily be the case, in fact. And I guess this takes us to this essential question, right? But I will let one of you read it since I've spoken so much.
So basically we've come to sort of this point where like, how do we kind of use all of these like emotions, qualities, and faculties that we've been given? Like how can, like it says here, how can I navigate them and use them in a way that doesn't bring me despair and loneliness, but instead lets me experience contentment and security in my life.
Yeah.
And so
And so precisely like this is something we've been talking about throughout the session, right? And we're just kind of driving it home here. But also we, and I find it necessary, like in studying this topic, like I benefited personally quite a lot from Imam Nursi's tafsir. And for him, he says, without tawheed, right? If I look at these emotions without the light of tawheed, then they turn me into the most unhappy of creatures. They take me to the lowest of beings, the most wretched of animals, the most suffering and sorrowful of intelligent beings. And you might say, like, why is that the case? Like, why is it that happens without tawheed or without the light of belief, right? And the reason is like, I have, again, we cited this example, like I have this feeling of compassion. I can't not have it. It's there. Uncompassionate things are happening. I see no sort of point of refuge. What do I do with this emotion? It's just bringing me despair. Or I have intelligence. I'm able to reason, right? But then that reasoning is again taking me to how sort of the ways in which everyone's misutilizing their choice and abilities and faculties. So we have all these faculties and abilities. But if I see them as belonging to myself or belonging to other people, right? Then that takes me to a sort of state of suffering. Because I say, well, they're totally misusing it, first of all. And also, like, this means that if justice belongs to people, they should be manifesting it, but they're not. If intelligence belongs to people, the country should be doing something, but they're not. Right? If mercy belongs to me, but I don't have the power to do something, so I'm just left with the mercy. Again, a grievous sort of experience comes to play. But if I take those feelings of compassion, if I take that intelligence, if I take those various faculties, if I take that dislike of injustice, if I see it through the light of Tawheed, right, of divine unity, and by this, like, I mean, if I read it in the name of my Creator, if I see it as being something that has been given to me, so that I can see He is the absolutely just one. He is the absolutely merciful one, who is enacting that justice, who is enacting that mercy in every single moment of my life and existence. Then those emotions, faculties, become a means of recognizing the givenness of all creation. They become a means of finding my point of refuge and support, right? Then I have and we'll talk about this, I guess, in the next verse. I am able to say Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel, right? So the previous sessions discussed this verse, right? But I just want to focus here on this part of it. Sufficient for us, like Hasbunallah, right? And Imam Nursi, when he gives the tafsir of this verse, he says the noon in that Hasbunallah, right? It can refer to sufficient for me or for us, as in all of my needs, not just this need, not just the need for mercy, but also the need for justice, the need for this, the need for that, like all of my needs, He is sufficient for, but also He's sufficient for me and those people and these people and the ones I care about, right? So the for us here is so important, because as a human being, it's not enough for me that I am being provided for. I'm so interrelated with the entirety of creation. I want everyone I care about to be provided for. I want every entity in the world, the environment, the world, the animals, to be cared about, the plants, so that Hasbunallah, like sufficient for us, all of creation, is the one who has given those needs to you in the first place. And I find that very important here. Again, I think living with this realization is part of living with Tawheed. That's my bit, at least on this portion. I don't know. Can you offer your comments or
Sure. I guess sort of one reflection on this that is kind of inspired also by a discussion with like a friend of mine. But I guess if we can say we can make this connection that our Creator is the absolute source of everything, and tie all of these feelings and emotions, all the sustenance we're given, back to Him. But I guess one thing that she mentioned that kind of stuck with me was her problem with kind of this concept was, well, what if that leads me to become lazy and to not put in any effort, because I've given it all back to my Rabb, and now I don't have to do anything, basically. Like this belongs to Him. He's gonna take care of it. So I guess yeah, basically. So I guess how do I then find the balance? Because clearly that doesn't, like, for me, that doesn't like really sit right with me. Like I can't just I don't know, like stay at home all the time and just like not care about the rest of the world. So I guess, yeah, how do we kind of like reconcile that?
Yeah. So let me just also, I guess, since apparently at one point we made some nice bullet points, might as well read them, right? So because that's the last, Zareen is transitioning us to the last portion of our discussion, right? Which is, okay, how does this understanding of divine mercy, this understanding of Tawheed, right? Being embedded in every aspect of my life, how does that impact then practically? Like, do I change anything? How do I practice this impact? Right? Is it being passive? Is it just staying at home? Like God's gonna take care of everyone, cool, you know? So we're gonna get to that in just a moment. But I guess let's also read these bullet points. So we get living with Tawheed, right? Being that it's inevitable, not hopelessness. Hopelessness not being inevitable, but inevitable to experience moments of sadness, helplessness, and that like I am needy, I am infinitely needy, I am infinitely in need of help, right? As a human being. But critical is how do I read or interpret such moments, right? That reading, that interpretation will either take me to a recognition of divine mercy, or it will take me to despair and hopelessness. And that becomes the sort of like the crucial moment there. And here we also, this verse of in usra yusra, right? Indeed, with hardship will be ease, is so essential because like when we look at this verse, we usually understand it's like, okay, like, the exam's really hard, but after the exam, you're set, you're free. Study for 4 years, but after graduation, you're good. And we always recognize that's not the case. Like, you graduate, now you have another problem. You have to find a job. You find a job, now you have to keep your boss happy. Now you've kept your boss happy, you have to keep your family happy. They never end, right? So it's not about ease that comes after. I mean, that might be the case sometimes, but it's also about the ease you find in the hardship, right? That when I'm sick, I can, even if I'm still sick, maybe I'll be sick until I die, right? But I can recognize I'm being taken care of, and the sickness is an educator for me. It's a teacher for me. Oh, there's the ease, right? I have a question. I'm looking for the mercy of God. Oh, this need to find mercy in my life, it's given. So the one who gave it must also fulfill it. The ease is there. So the ease does not just show up when the problem situation is resolved, right? But it shows up the moment I make that vertical connection with my creator and realize the createdness or givenness of that particular moment. And this leads us to Zareen, your question, right? Which is like, what do I do? And there was this great hadith. I think you shared it with us, right? Would you like to read it?
Sure. So Umar said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say, if you were to rely upon Allah with the reliance he is due, you would be given provision like the birds. They go out hungry in the morning and come back with full bellies in the evening. And so I guess sort of the reason I wanted to share this hadith was
You answer your own.
yeah, pretty much. It's okay though. Because I feel like this question like kind of really was sort of kind of at the heart of why I like sometimes feel hopeless, is that like there's a different aspect of it for me, and that like then like what is my like purpose if I'm connecting everything back to its source. And I think this hadith like really spoke to me because it's sorry, I'm just trying to collect my thoughts here. But it just seemed like a practical kind of solution, in that I still need to like take an action and like seek like sustenance, like this bird goes out in the morning when it's hungry. But it's not like the bird is not panicking over whether or not it will find food. It's been given the means to find food. It finds food and then it returns home. So I feel like
And when
that
it returns home, it doesn't say I provided myself with
Right.
sustenance.
exactly.
Right? It recognizes, oh, it was given that sustenance.
Right.
It's seeking it out wasn't it doesn't make it the creator of that sustenance, but it shows that it made a choice there. And that was
Yeah,
mentioned again.
exactly. Yeah, because then otherwise it would be able to sustain itself like forever, and it wouldn't have to go back the next morning to seek food again. So I guess for this right. So for this, I felt that like, this feels like a practical like application, like similar to the hadith that talks about like tying like the camel, like these actions in and of themselves are like prayers to our creator. And it's not just that we're like not doing anything. They are another means of like seeking our Rabb and seeking that sustenance.
So yeah, so this hadith is beautiful, right? Because it's showing us what reliance looks like. And this is kind of along the same lines of like what patience looks like, right? It's not the sense of passivity, but it's a form of supplication, in fact. It's a form of dua. Like we imagine dua to be just like we sit here, we raise our hands. And I think to be honest, like we can't emphasize the significance of that sort of verbal supplication enough, but also taking steps, asking from our creator has can take multiple shapes and forms, right? So trying to the best of our abilities, utilizing our free will or free choice to make such decisions that God will create a result in which his mercy reaches others, right? Or assistance reaches others. That is also part of the way in which I can supplicate to my creator, right? And here we wrote reliance requires action and seeking sustenance. But again, I make that intention, I make that choice, and the result is created, right? So the provision is created for the bird. And similarly, so this doesn't mean I go to work and I provide for myself, but rather my going to work is a form of supplication. It doesn't guarantee my provision, but I ask for it from my creator, and then he provides it to me through that means in particular. And so I wanted to end perhaps on this note of dua again being a means of declaring our reality, right? It's a way of presenting our needs to our creator. And when we present our needs to our creator, then we are also we become more conscious of who can provide for those needs as well, right? It becomes our way of acknowledging that, yes, I'm endlessly needy, and I see this country, that country, or myself, I'm not able to provide for this issue, right? But I recognize you as the point of refuge, you as the point of support, and I'm asking from you. So when we make that verbal supplication, it becomes a way of instilling within us a certain awareness that even when we take our physical steps, we add pressures to our institutions, we try to change policy, we do anything that we can, right? We give our donations. It becomes a means of recognizing that the result of those actions do not belong to me. Those were forms of supplication. Those were forms of asking, and that I should ask in all these ways. But also that when I ask, I realize that I am not the one who is creating these results, right? So dua becomes a form of declaring our reality and reminding ourselves of who this absolute source of mercy and justice is in our lives. Sarah, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, it's just like, so talking about this, it reminds me, so what we're talking about is when we experience these things. So we talked about our attitude towards things, right? And a lot of the time, like we talk about like sabr. So like, so we get like these, when we see something, when we see this injustice, we just have like a lot of feelings, and then we have immediate feelings, and we want also like we have immediate response, and we want immediate solution, and this is not how like no. If you read the Quran, like you realize that, we will always be going through these injustices, like these exams. And it's not only us, but the people, before us. It's not only like by simple words, like bad people go through bad things, even like the believers went through bad things. And then you go to take advice from the Quran. And then one of the things that we're talking about, how my attitude towards thing is, it reminded me of the ayah, like, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. So, like, this injustice that is happening, it should also, like, the sabirin, those who live this in patience. It means not, like, patience, not only sitting there and waiting, Patience is also what you said, to supplicate by doing, but also the verbal supplication. So, وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ, to give them, glad tidings. And then the same ayah or the ayah next to it brings us back to what we're talking about, that everything is not from us. So وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّ لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Give glad tidings to those who practice sabr, those who, when they are faced by adversity or suffering, they will say, we are from Allah, and to Allah will return. So we are from Allah and everything. So whatever we're witnessing, whatever feelings we're having is from Allah,
And that's precisely the good news, right? The good news is showing that whatever adversity, like from the point of qadar, not the point of human to human free will and misuse, right? From the point of qadar is that whatever is being created is a form of education. Everyone experiences it in different ways, right? But the point of it is to ideally guarantee, secure my eternal happiness, my eternal refuge with my creator, and that it becomes a means of acquainting me with his qualities. So the good news, I experience the good news when I recognize the mercy present in that, you said exams, those exams become opportunities for us to connect with our creator. And when we become connected to our creator, we become connected to a point of support, of absolute support that completely prevents us from deciding that there is no point of support or refuge, which is hopelessness, right? But Jazakumullah khair, I think we are at the end of time. Inshallah, let's end here, but we can continue the conversation and discussion like post. We can all talk about it. Inshallah, and we'll pray Maghrib and then have dinner inshallah soon. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين آمين جزاكم الله خير